Welcome to another impactful episode of the PSDA podcast. I am Craig King, your host. Before we get started with your favorite guest.
Only guest.
Well, we had Kathy Manus last week.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I wouldn't say that I'm the favorite guest anymore, though. That's not good for either of us.
There we go. No, not good for either one of us. She's probably going to listen to this, Patrick. But we're not going to start over. So last week, if you did not hear Kathy Manus last week, not only did she give a recap of what happened in the General Assembly last week, she really talked about her story and her journey in PSDA and also being a third grade teacher at Irwin Elementary School in Lancaster. And I said Lancaster correct way. If you say Lancaster, she will get you.
Doesn't exist.
That does not exist. But before Patrick gets started, I want to give a shout out to Voorhees University. Last week I attended their Systemic Change in Teaching and Learning panel symposium on their campus where we heard from Keith Price and Dr. Shaw from Barnwell, Keith Price from Georgetown, and we just learned about the great things the EPI program is doing down there. And also we were able to talk and become a partner with Voorhees, and we're excited about that work that we're going to be doing. But Patrick.
Fun, important fact. Keith Price, my former principal at Blythewood High School. Nothing says South Carolina education quite like that.
That was a good segue, Patrick. 7 years, I think he was at Blythewood High.
I may have been closer to 10.
Oh, wow.
Time flies when you're having a good time.
It does fly.
And wearing ridiculous outfits. If you want to check out YouTube, you can find some high-quality Keith Price dressed up as a principal stuff.
That's awesome work. He's doing some great work. And Voorhees, they are expanding their reach as partners across the state, not just in their area, but Georgetown and Voorhees are not necessarily right beside each other. So I'm doing some great work. And also, don't let me forget, tomorrow we're hosting 6 other teaching fellows, cohorts from across the state. Francis Marion Lander, USC Columbia, USC Upstate, Winthrop, and Coastal Carolina. So we're excited about having them with us tomorrow for their Hill Day. Patrick, what's going on?
Not much. We got 4 weeks left in this legislative session, so we're just trying to make it to the finish line in one piece.
So instead of saying 4 weeks left, say 1 month, because one is less than 4.
That's true. I like that. 1 month.
There we go.
1 month. Less than a month, because May 11th is sine die, last day of the legislative session.
Let's cross the hurdle. So what's going on in the General Assembly? What do we need to know?
Well, the Senate this week will be taking up their version of the state budget. The House passed theirs about 2-3 weeks ago now, maybe even a little longer. Time flies when you're having fun. But this is the Senate's chance to get a run through the state budget. They will be looking at a Senate Finance Committee version of the budget that looks very similar to the House version when it comes to education. There's some differences in the budget, but it's really not in the education space. It, at its core, increases state funding to districts by $260 million over last year and increases every cell on the statewide salary schedule by $2,500. There's a possibility that you could see an increase on the floor since the Senate has an additional $530 million in projected revenues over what the House had available. But the likelihood of that happening on the floor, a tweak of that size in the budget is probably unlikely. It would probably be even more likely if it went back to the House for their second go-round of the budget, which is coming in a few weeks. So we'll be watching that. Don't expect anything really big to occur based on the way the Finance Committee debate went. But one thing about the General Assembly is the minute you don't expect something to happen, that's probably when it's going to happen. So we'll be watching it closely and sharing updates with members.
Good deal. And I want to apologize to our friends at Voorhees. I was having a sidebar conversation with 2 leaders down there, and I told them it was an additional $350 million. I had my first 2 numbers.
You had the numbers right.
That's not too far off. 350, 530.
That's the kind of thing that always got me on a math test in high school is when the answer choices all had the same numbers. They just changed around the order of the numbers. That just messes with your head.
That's partial credit in my book.
That's right.
That's not how the real world works, Patrick. So paid parental leave. I know it's Senate budget week, but the House passed that paid parental leave, and we are at the cross line or at the finish line. Hopefully, do you anticipate them getting through the budget and then taking on any other outstanding bills that may have come from the House?
Yeah, I mean, when the Senate finishes the budget this week, they will have 3 weeks remaining to run through any bills, and they'll really prioritize bills that have made it through the House, because if it hadn't made it through the House at this point, it's unlikely to become law. And we hope that paid parental leave is going to be in that stack of bills that they take up. There have literally been hundreds of emails from PSTA members to senators asking for them to take up this bill. This was a unanimous bill in the House. That tells you it's got support across parties, across regions of the state, rural, urban. This has support. It just needs to get on the calendar. And so hopefully we're going to see a Senate subcommittee take up this bill real soon after the budget.
But that's good to hear. Anything else going on that we should be aware about?
Yeah. The House Education Committee is actually going to take some time this week to address some bills that are unique to the House that haven't made it through the Senate yet. And the one I would really put on the radar of members and education advocates is House Bill 4280, the Educator Assistance Act, which is authored by Education and Public Works Chair Shannon Erickson. Chair Erickson is new to her position as chair this year, not new to the General Assembly. She was a longtime member of the Ways and Means Committee, but she has made it clear since she took that position that she was looking to remove what she considers to be, or what she's called, excessive bureaucratic burdens and paperwork on teachers. And she filed this bill a few weeks ago, and it does exactly what she said it was going to do. It removes burdens on teachers. And we believe at PSTA that it gives teachers more time by removing a lot of the excessive burdens that we face with recertification. It gives educators more support and greater respect by changing some things about the way that contracts work for teachers. Most notably the fact that, to my knowledge, I'm still waiting on somebody to tell me of another profession that works like this, but as any South Carolina educator knows, you sign your contract by May 11th, and you figure out in June or July what you're getting paid. It always makes me kind of smirk when I look at free agency periods during sports, and just thinking about, well, what would happen if this superstar athlete was told by their franchise, we're going to offer you a contract, we want you to sign it, and we'll get back to you in 6 weeks and tell you what you're getting paid.
Yeah.
We know they're not signing that contract, but that's how it works in South Carolina. This bill would give South Carolina educators a 10-day period after the publication of a district salary schedule to withdraw their contract acceptance without penalty. And so, in effect, what that's going to do is it's going to compel districts to make sure that they are putting state-aid classroom dollars where it's intended to go, which is into educator salaries. So we think that's important. It also this bill would mitigate some of the breach of contract language that exists in state statute that would really give the state board some more flexibility to not punish an educator who has to breach contract for reasons like your spouse getting redeployed or having to move back home to take care of an ill family member. These are reasons that PSTA members have called us and told us that districts have sought their contracts to be suspended in the past. That's just not respectful of a profession. And so we're excited to see that in this bill as well.
Yeah. And Patrick, in my travels with PSTA, you mentioned two words that ring clearly when I talk to teachers: time and support. And I see not only one piece of legislation, but I see multiple pieces of legislation that has that as a center focus. And, in addition, teacher pay, and we want to make sure that we're streamlining teacher pay and any aid that we receive from the state. So it's good to hear that the General Assembly is hearing from teachers, listening, and putting forth good faith efforts in legislation.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. We are fooling ourselves if we think we can address the teacher shortage in this state without addressing salaries. Mm-hmm. But we're equally fooling ourselves if we think that salary alone will reverse the educator shortage. You've got to address working conditions. And something as simple when we talk about time, which is something teachers always say they need, both instructional time in the classroom and work-life balance time. One of the most, I think, duplicative activities that teachers have to complete in South Carolina is the paperwork associated with our recertification process every 5 years.
Yes.
It's not that PSTA, and I certainly don't oppose ongoing professional development. Teachers are certified professionals, and every certified profession has requirements for ongoing education and training. But in South Carolina, we have 5 days minimum built into a 190-day teacher contract that is dedicated solely to professional growth and development. So assuming that those 5 days are used in full for what they are supposed to be used for, that means every 5 years, teachers complete a minimum of 200 hours of recertification activities under the direction of their school administration and their district administration. That exceeds the 120 hours required for recertification, and that's not accounting for PLCs and in-service activities that we do during the school day. So the hours are there. The training is there. What the recertification process does is simply creates a compliance-driven paperwork process that drains the time of teachers. There is nothing more painful than a teacher in year 5 of their certificate scrambling to find the certificate that shows they completed this PD activity 4 years ago, or the assistant principal trying to find that for the teachers, or the district HR personnel who has to certify the paperwork and send it to the State Department. It's a lot of unnecessary time. And if we can remove that burden, which H 4280 would do by affording a permanent certificate to an individual that has been professionally certified in South Carolina, that's time that teachers gain back to focus on instruction, on work with students. That's time that assistant principals get back to focus on work with students and with teachers on developing instructional practices. Let's keep our eyes on the important thing, which is professional growth and development. It's not paperwork compliance. And so 4280 rightly addresses that.
Yeah. And Patrick, you talked about the things that teachers are already going to do based on their schools. Let's not even bring in the things that teachers do on their own.
Absolutely.
National board certification, advanced degrees, going to conferences on their own, so teachers are professionals and we should be treated as such. Before we get out of here, if you follow us on social media, you probably saw a graphic posted. You probably got an email about a survey that literally takes 15 seconds. And Patrick was not telling a fib when he said that. Patrick, talk to us about that survey and what we want to hear from our members.
Yeah, it's a simple survey. It just asks you if you support a bill. The bill is S305, which would allow an individual to get work experience credit for having 5 years or more of occupational related experience aligned to their teaching field. So if I've been in scientific research for 6 years and I'm a career changer and I decide to teach high school science, I could get 6 years of work experience on my certificate, in effect come in at step 6, which obviously means higher salary, which helps mitigate some of the salary hit that an individual feels when they move from the private sector into education. PSTA believes this is a tool that can help with the teacher shortage. It's not going to reverse it by itself, but it's another tool in the toolkit. But the reason for the survey is because when this bill was being debated in the Senate Education Committee, there was an interesting back and forth between some senators, not about the bill itself. It had universal support and it got reported unanimously by the committee. But you had some members of the committee that stated that they were afraid that if the bill was passed to where an individual got a 1-to-1 work experience to certificate experience credit, so 6 years equals step 6 or 10 years equals step 10, that existing educators would feel that that was disrespectful to their experience, that would be demoralizing to them, and it could cause some morale issues within the profession. You had other senators who didn't feel like that would be an issue because at the end of the day, teachers want to address the teacher shortage and find a way to get highly qualified people into the classroom. It was an interesting debate, both sides of which were genuinely focused on how do we both recruit and retain and respect teachers. And so at PSDA, when we hear discussion about what teachers want, we want to hear from teachers. That's the way we approach our advocacy, is we don't assume that anyone in our office can speak on behalf of teachers. We ask teachers for feedback. That's how we inform our legislative agenda with a survey every year. So this survey is a simple one-question survey about, do you want 305 as it is, or would you support it as it is? Would you want a 50% work experience credit, so 10 years equals 5 years on your certificate? Or do you just oppose the salary or the proposal in S305 altogether? 15 seconds allows us to share that info with senators so that they're having concrete conversations based on what teachers are actually saying and not forcing senators to speculate on what teachers might think.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that, Patrick, because one thing we have prided ourselves on here at PSCA is we want our members and our board, which is made up of teachers, to help drive the conversation and drive the communications that we have with the General Assembly. So take a moment a 15-second moment and fill out that survey. Patrick, it's been great.
Always appreciate it.
Shout out to our members in Alaska. I don't think we have any, but
are they getting daylight yet? Are we at that
maybe
point?
not.
Okay.
Who knows, Patrick? Well, it's been another impactful episode of the PSA podcast. I'm Craig King, your host. Have a great day.